Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dangerous Wednesdays. Yeah. Where danger is around every corner. Yeah, that's. Yeah, I am your new host, Ross Forever. This is my show now. Ha! Joining me, as ever, is the Dungeon Master, Daniel Thompson. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? I noticed on the thing, James hasn't changed the header on it, so it still says he's hosting it. So he's clearly marked his chair. But it is good to have you in the host chair, Ross. It's good to
yeah.
have you running the show. I can't wait for this.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have a first here for Dangerous Wednesdays. We have the one and only Scott Wilson Bedsgrove.
Hello, hi. I like your new name and title, Ross Forever. That's good. I for one welcome our new Ross Forever overlords.
You're welcome. Welcome everyone. Welcome one and all. Welcome to Dangerous Wednesdays, where we will be talking about things. Lots of different things. Well, actually, it's not. It's one thing. How is everyone today? Daniel Thompson, how are you today? Oh, I've got to look at the chat as well. Sorry.
You've got to look at the chat as well.
I've got it now. It's working though. That's good. So Dangerlings, I set this all up. So if there's anything, if there's an issue, let me know. If you can hear me, okay, let us know. Because I had to set this all up because unfortunately James can't be with us today. So anyway, Daniel Thompson, how are you?
Hello. I'm great. I'm good. I had some actual work today. I did some GP training where you train doctors. You do pretend to be a patient. I was pretending to be someone who was stressed because they were working too much, which, oh, the irony. But I also forgot that we were recording yesterday. And so I turned up for my job with an avatar of me with a D20 and with this background behind me. So I've been spreading the Danger Club love to professional work environments.
Completely accidentally with a D20. Yep. Amazing.
Very nice, very nice. Scott, how has your week been in lockdown?
It's been good. I've been doing a lot of effectively storytelling and Dungeons and Dragoning stuff and role-playing things, either getting involved with projects or just playing games a lot. That was a lot of my summer lockdown. It's going to become a part of this as well. It's my coping mechanism. It's true. I also have done those role plays before, Dan. I actually had to do one where my case was I had to. My person had a third nipple and he believed that there was milk coming out of it and there wasn't. And in the whole testing of the doctors was that they had to convince this person professionally that they didn't have a third nipple and B, there wasn't actually milk coming out of it. So I've kind of been there too.
That's wonderful.
Hello to Steph. And hello to Candice. Hello to Stu. I'm not sure who's Mad Turnips again.
Mad Turnips is Matt Letty. Hello,
Matt Letty. The Lettermeister. And Rovergerg, that is...
Greg.
Hello, Greg.
Everyone.
I'm really good at remembering everyone's handles.
Rovergerg.
Rovergerg.
I just like saying his name.
Rovergerg. So we have, firstly, leggings check, Daniel Thompson.
All right. I don't know who worked with the background, but I am... full unicorn.
Very nice.
There we are.
Nice.
With the sparkles. Earlier on I've been wearing these all day, but for the meeting one, I just put a shirt on for the top, so I was business on the top, party at the bottom, as it should be.
Of course. Stu said that he can't mess as much as he's up to his elbow in washing up. It's that time of year again.
What was the dramatic pause, Ross? Why did you do the dramatic pause?
No, I just love the fact that he's it's that time of year again. It's washing up. Did he just leave it for an entire year, just piling up, and then just goes, yeah, I'll do it. And he says he values his phone, so he doesn't want to drop it.
Your elbows is the correct amount to be up to when you're washing up. That's
really?
That's not an unusual amount.
I only usually go up to my wrist, if anything. This is what you tune in for Dangerous Wednesdays for, to learn.
How much are you guys leaving in your sink? I'm knuckle deep, if anything, guys. Like, I'm getting it done as and when it happens.
Yeah, Mad Turnips said Zoom is formal. Yeah, it is very formal. It's basically because I couldn't work out how to individually screen clip each webcam. So that's why it's on Zoom. Cool. Yeah, so today, Dangerlings, you are here for a very special episode. That you have 3 fabulous DMs or GMs. It's like the Mount Rushmore of DMs. Forget Matt Mercer, yeah? Boo. You got 3 of the best DMs in the whole country. Yeah, I said it. What are you going to do about it? So, the fact that we have got these 3 amazing DMs, we're going to talk about homebrewing campaigns and everything homebrew. If you guys have any questions for us, then let us know in the chat. If you have any questions for any of us about, homebrewing or anything about campaigns, but we'll talk about stuff as we go. But if you have any questions, Mad Mophead said, tweet us, Matt Mercer. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Please
Yeah,
tweet us. That would be that would be
Ideally
amazing.
not specifically about Ross calling you out on our live stream, but more about the quality family entertainment we do. But
Exactly.
we'll take either.
And we also, Scott, do you want to tell the story about when we saw Critical Role at Comic Con and you saw one of the members of Critical Role and what you did?
Yeah, that was kind of like that's a homebrew accident. We'd gone to MCM for like the first time ever, and we dressed up as our characters that you now know. And that was the original pictures you can see on our Instagram and stuff. That's where they all came from. We we were aware that Critical Role were there, and I was like, guys, got to somehow see Critical Role, and everyone else was like, leave it, Scott, leave it. It's the queues are like a mountain, like it's an undoable quest. And I was like, no, somehow we must do it. Anyway, sort of gave up, got our own content throughout the day, did the things that we needed to do. And then as it was closing, I saw through like a less populated exit hall, storming with purpose, a lady marching Sam Riegel towards the exit. And I think I was with Colin, I think it was with you, wasn't I, Ross?
Yeah.
At the time, we were trying to take a picture of something. I literally looked up and I was like, now is the time. And I fully recognized the look of a professional trying to leave a gig and not be pestered. So I just sort of swam next to him as he walked past. And I went, I'm so sorry, sir, Mr. Riegel, sir, please, would you mind awfully if I got a selfie? And he literally with proper, quite genuine smile, ish, he was like, if you're quick, and I went okay, and took a quick selfie, which was very polite of him. I actually tweeted him about that after that, and he was very gracious about it. Very, very good guy, even when he was trying to leave a gig. I imagine he got separated from the rest because he had to go do, I don't know, like some kind of lightning bolt thing with someone else, and then there's a reason why they didn't all leave together. Either way, he got poached by a badly dressed Caragor One Fang, and now we've got a picture of Sam and Kaz.
And it's a good thing actually that I'm now the new host, because I actually am getting Sam Riegel on next week, because that's the sort of guest you get with me. So nice. It's gone from Scott Wilson Presgrove to Sam Riegel. So it's natural progression.
Are we coming back next week, Ross, or is it just you and Sam?
No, it's just going to be me and
Ross
Sam.
and Sam, like just an episode of Cheers.
Yeah. So we have a question already.
Nice.
Stu has asked, do you add the yeast steadily or in one go?
Oh, homebrew. I should know more about home brewing, because Henry Time, like it's the sort of thing I would have researched, because he did all of his brewing, and I was like, someone's gonna ask a question about brewing, and then I got to it, and I was like, I don't even know what the yeast is used for. I'm gonna keep saying yeast and just hope that someone picks this ball up.
Actually, Stu, you have to develop the culture first before you brew the yeast. Once you've generated the culture, I think in an oven and added it to it slowly over a few days, then you can add the yeast. I've got no idea. I think that's how it works. That's how it works for bread. Right? I'm pretty sure beer and bread are the same, right? Pretty much
Beer
the
and
same.
bread. So we have a question. I missed one. There was something about where do we stand on magical tattoos.
Great.
Yeah, Dan, where do you stand? I mean, I'm not sure I just guess in general. What's
Yeah, I mean,
the
I'm going to
homebrew?
listen to the answer to this question with intent because Brimbone might be quite interested in the answer to this.
Well, they're already. I don't know about in terms of homebrewing because they're already in Pathfinder. There's loads of rules for them. Like Velda has a load. Some of his spells are in his self markings, and obviously Brimbone had all his tattoos. I tend to. I would tend to lean on them just being flavor tattoos because it's a cool roleplay thing, and I think that's one of the fun things about playing a spellcaster is you come up with the fun description of how your spells manifest, and that's just a way of doing that. It feels like putting extra rules on that. I can see where it might be useful if you're playing a game where the stuff you're carrying is relevant, and maybe being able to go undercover without your spell book is useful, but it's one of these things that I've never really felt needs a lot of extra rules. You can cover it with stuff that's already in the game.
I think you're right. I think generally speaking, it's worth it as a flavor thing. I think there is potential for it as reactions to things. Like if you store them up, and I know Pathfinder has them, and I'm pretty sure D&D's just released rules for them now as well, or a while back, part of the UA thing. It would be cool if you had them as a reaction thing. Is it something triggered the reaction, as if you got launched off a cliff and then the wings across your shoulders sprang to life. But you can only do that like once a week or something. That would be a cool idea, I think. If I was to homebrew spell tattoos, that's how I would do it. But that might have already been done. I don't know.
Yeah. Mad Turnip says I made a themed D&D beer for my group last year, which sounds cool. Yeah, that would be cool.
What was it called?
Yeah, what was it called? And they also say, what about making your own spell tattoos as a tattooist? So, yeah. Let's get into it. Let's not talk. I don't know why the chat's disappearing, but it's fine. I'm sure it is fine.
I have the chat here, so if you're running...
No, I mean, it just disappears. The old messages are disappearing. But it's fine. I'm sure we'll be fine. Let's get into...
The chat disappearing is the yeast worries. Sorry.
Let's get into it. So, we have all DM'd campaigns. Well, currently we are all DMing at the moment. Scott has several games that I'm sure he's DMing over this lockdown. How many games are you DMing at the moment? Three. That's pretty good.
I have three campaigns running. I reduced it.
Yeah.
It got silly, so I thought I'd come down to the normal amount of 3.
Fair enough. Dan has obviously been DMing for years and years, or GMing. I'm just going to say DMing because I'm used to saying DMing.
It's fine.
So, Dan's been doing it for years. So Scott, actually, he started years, and I've been doing it for about a couple of years, I think.
Since you started the show, really.
Yeah. Scott, you've been DMing for...
You've actually...
No, I think
you've been doing it longer than me. I think I've only been, this marks like 1 year for me, so I've only been doing it for 1 year. I am 1 year in. You guys have both been doing it far longer than me. Oh, you don't talk about that.
Well, we are going to talk about it.
That was the prototype game. I ran it for like 10 months. Is that on your list to talk about? All right, well, good. I hope I hope the creators of that game are not listening.
Dan,
yes.
Why don't you talk about your experience in homebrewing, where you first started homebrewing your campaigns, and what you think the good things are about homebrewing and the bad things, or the positives and negatives about homebrewing campaigns.
I mean, I started off because I started playing role-playing games super early, like in school, back when we didn't know that there was such a thing as a pre-written game. Before we knew there was such a thing as a Dungeons and Dragons, really, we were just kind of homebrewing our own game systems. And since then, we've kind of come up with other stuff. Since moving into Pathfinder has been the first time that I've really lent heavily on pre-written stuff, because because the Paizo stuff is so well written, that's the only time I've read adventure modules and been like, cool, I want to just run this because this is a really, this is a really great adventure. The rest of the time it's kind of like, I'm just going to do my own thing and take a couple of bits out. But that's that's not necessarily a Paizo thing specifically, although they are, they're great in terms of writing. It's more of a modern thing, even back when we were running games together sort of 6-7 years ago, when we were just starting out playing 3.5, we were playing old sort of third edition D&D adventure modules, and adventure modules back then were much more kind of, here is a list of monster stat blocks and a bit of motivation as to why they're all hanging out in this same room. There are some more famous big ones, and I've got like the what is it, the Tomb of Annihilation, the Vault of Many, all the D&D books have weird names. The one where they redid all of the classic D&D adventures for 5th edition. I can't remember what it's called.
I think the Tomb of Annihilation, I think.
Tomb of Annihilation is a famous adventure. It's not that.
The Yawning Portal?
It's called Yawning Portal, that's the one. This is one of the reasons I like the Paizo books, is they're literally just called the one about magic, the one about swords, and it's like, okay, cool, I know what these are. That's got like rewritten versions of loads of classic dungeons, and they're really fun, but they are kind of just like, murder mazes with a bit of narrative attached to them. So kind of early on, if you're gaming early on, you really need to homebrew to kind of come up with your own stuff. And so I've done, but even then I would pull pre-written adventures out to kind of build dungeons or to build individual quests, and I would just reskin everything and rewrite everything, but leave all the stat blocks in place because I'm lazy and I can't be bothered to like build encounters. So I'll be like, okay, there's a level 5 fight, that's fine, let's just rename everything in it, let's make it look different, let's put it in a mansion instead of a swamp where it is in this thing, and that will work. And so you kind of just start grafting things together, and then we get to where we are now with Danger Club, which is ostensibly playing pre-written content. That's kind of our thing, because that's what people come to us for. But realistically, I think the Danger Club is a homebrew podcast. Really, it's we change so much about all of the adventures that we play that it is very, very lightly connected compared to someone who's just playing it purely out of the book.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Scott, what is your experience of homebrewing? And oh no, it's disappeared. We need to know.
Is that the chat?
Yeah. We need to know. Mad Mophead Turnip. It was Amy, wasn't it? No,
Amy's Mad Mophead. Yeah.
Yes. She wants to know about the superhero game. So why don't you start talking about the superhero game that you DM'd? Yes, it was good. I liked it. So
interestingly enough, that was quite homebrew, I suppose. So years ago, I tried finding, after Dan had run a 3.5 campaign for us, I thought I'd try my hand at it, at DMing, and I got this system called, might not name it. It was an old 80s superhero system, and there wasn't many around back then. It feels like, the annals of time, for I am ancient. It wasn't that long ago, but there wasn't really superhero TTRPGs around then. I found this one, and I ran it for the guys, and because it was just when all the Marvel stuff was coming out, it felt on theme. We'd all watched a lot of superhero stuff together, so it felt on theme, and the guys made various superheroes. I mean, I did try and present them as sort of grayish world, and they stepped up to the task. But there was we had, you want to tell us about your sort of Iron Man murderous criminal character, Ross? The Red Starling.
I played a scientist, who's gone. Sorry, Scott, you were explaining.
Who upon finding his rival and defeating his rival, executed him in the street in front of thousands of onlookers after a bit of a chase. But that was an interesting system that was mainly done on like tapes, and there wasn't much content in the books that I could see, so I ended up sort of like coming up with a city. That was difficult, because coming up with fantasy stuff, you know, you have like wagons and trees and houses and stuff. And in the real world, people go, well, I mean, so we've got mobile phones, right? And you go, yes, obviously you have. And they go, well, I mean, I know how the real world works. So if this is kind of like the real world just a few years in the future, then we'll have access to all these things. And I'm like, yes, you can get the internet in your headset. That's fine. You're just keeping like barely a step ahead of everybody else. And for a first-time player, I can't recommend. First-time DMing, I can't recommend it because you're better off just easing yourself into what you know players want and then what you can give to them, as opposed to trying to just like stay ahead of their own tech curve. I think Ross, you've got a little bit of that right now when you're running the Cyberpunk campaign, aren't you?
Yes,
Keep throwing things at you like, we can do this in real life, so surely in 100 years we'd be able to do more of it now, right? And Ross is like, yeah.
Yeah.
It was an interesting campaign. I think we got some good things out of it, and it was interesting to see just how much damage a team of superheroes could rain upon a land or a place or a bad guy. It got stupid quickly. It got super quickly with the power levels, and it should do really because it's a superheroes thing. But just what you can do with it. I think at one point I set up one of the team. They had to go. They were a speedster. It was Mr. Rabbit. And he had to run up a colossal chain from connecting the Earth to the moon, and he had to run up it like in one breath or something like that. It was insane. It had some great things came out of it, but the stuff not keen on. Wasn't keen on it. It was clunky. The systems that we use now would actually weirdly you'd be dealing with like level 15 to 20 characters in terms of power stuff. It'd just be crazy, but that it would be weirdly better suited to deal with that in terms of powers and things like that.
How did you feel about creating the world? Because obviously you created pretty much everything, didn't you? In terms of the setting. Scott.
Yeah, good. It was fine. I had a base idea of like a problem that affected a country, and then sort of made it a vaguely political problem. Threw a load of bad guys somewhere that were doing a thing, and then ran from there and then introduced the heroes, these guys from the small all the way up to the top. Like they started off fighting crime fighters and vigilantes and stuff and bad guys on the streets, and then sort of grew them up. It was good. Coming up with the world is fun. I've done it a lot anyway, having been a bit of a nerd since I was young, and listening to music and coming up with fantasy worlds or sci-fi worlds like I've done for ages and ages and ages. So being a grown-ass adult, it's nice to be able to like sieve them and go like, which ones would be great to throw at my friends so they could interact with and have like a fun time with, and which ones are the ones that should just stay in my head that are private. That's good, and you only really get that as you sort of like get experience and stuff. Like the thought and planning I did for that superheroes campaign was a lot, and it did have payoff, but the planning that you need to do now, like I've started a one-shot game now with some newbies who never played anything before, and the amount of planning you have to do for that is minimal. Forget your maps and your flags and your banners and your countries and your factions and all that kind of stuff, all that just describe the doorway and then the pig that they inevitably see. That's 2 hours. It's 2 hours of a game with 5 players, so it's interesting.
Stu has said, I imagine it would be fun to do a superhero RPG based on The Boys, which would be pretty cool. I'm pretty sure there are
great.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are like some RPGs out there that have superheroes. I think there was one called
Mutants
City
and
of
Masterminds.
Yeah,
Very good superhero RPG.
I think there was one called City of something or other. City of something. I can't remember. I think it's City of Superheroes or something. City of something. But yeah, there are. Go on.
Yeah. I was just going to say The Boys itself, that's a whole different power set, isn't it? Because you're playing as a protagonist. I assume Stu meant The Boys, the comic and TV show, and not like the people from the Danger Club. So I'm running with that. The Boys would be a different power set, wouldn't it? You'd be utilizing different resources and things like that in order to try and take down a superhero. You'd never have like a front line of these are your cool powers that you'd use. All your expenditure and resources would be in like who you can have access to and weird trick weapons that you could pull out at a moment's notice and things like that, wouldn't it? Quite interesting. And leverage that you would have over politicians or journalists or whatever in order to expose someone. That'd be interesting.
Candice said it's the City of Heroes was an online computer game. It was a massive.
Oh man,
City
of Heroes is one of the greatest games I've ever played. It was. So let me tell my City of Heroes story. I played that for years with friends, and we at Christmas me and a bunch of mates were like, we had like 5 of us. We were like, let's make a team. Let's make a super team. We'll role play the whole thing. It's not a role play heavy game, but we're going to stay in character for the whole thing. We're going to make like a kid superhero team called like Young Dawn Patrol or something. It was like the kid version of like the main heroes of this thing in the game. And we're going to go around and do it. And they had a thing at Christmas where there were like Christmas presents scattered around and you could click on them. And maybe you got a present, maybe you got a little buff or a special hat you could wear. And there was a tiny percentage chance that if you clicked on it, it would spawn a gigantic snowman the size of a skyscraper that would start trying to destroy the city and you'd have to fight it. And that game did a great thing where it was, if you fought bosses weren't like level 50 or level 60. They were 3 levels higher than you. So whatever damage they do to you, it's relative to your level. So it's something that is really hard for you to fight, but it won't just immediately kill you. So we could fight this thing, but it was really tough because we were level 1 characters with just like little speedy punches and things. So we're like fighting it, and I'm just nerding out, playing, like messaging on like the system-wide chat. And I'm just being like, this is Young Dawn Patrol requesting backup. We have, we have a giant snowman inbound. And we're like, oh, this is fun. And then suddenly I just get a private message being like, this is Silver Spectre. We are responding. And suddenly, like, the sky lights up and loads of other superheroes just come flying in, and they're all playing it fully in character. Like, great job, kid. We'll take it from here. And I was like, this is the best. And then I died right at the end of the fight and didn't get experience points for it.
Very nice.
Oh no!
Worth it.
Oh, the true story of heroes, eh? Gosh.
Candice loved it. Steph said that it's the first time that she's ever heard about City of Heroes. So yeah, go.
It doesn't exist.
It
no,
does.
They shut it down, and they really sadly, because all of the devs for it and all the mods and things had characters in the game, and they were all like the characters from the story. So the developers could come in and play those characters in game. And basically, what happened was the studio discontinued it and just one day locked out their accounts and just said, "Sorry, the game's done. You're all being made redundant or being reassigned to other stuff." And they didn't have anything. So on the final day of the game, all of the devs made their characters from it as like level 1 characters and turned up in the central square to like just sit in vigil with everyone and just see out the last minutes of the game.
Oh, that is really sad. Blinded Sphinx says, yeah, that's so sad. It is. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about homebrewing. So we're going to have a little break here. And we're going to go to some, because I've seen Dangerous Wednesdays before. You do Paizo News at the beginning. I thought, why not do it in the middle? And it's definitely not because I forgot. So let's find out if there's any RPG Paizo News. Scott, do you want to do the sting for this Paizo News with your thing?
Yes.
Cool. There you go. There's
News. This is chaos. I love this. Oh my god.
Go on, Dan. What's new?
All right, I've got a few bits of news for you to pull up. So the first thing, the biggest thing probably, is that the Pathfinder 2nd edition, second errata, has dropped. So this is where we talked about it a little bit last week. Basically, when the game comes out, it's playtested as much as it can be, but inevitably over time, things are discovered in it that aren't quite working. Sometimes they're misprints, and sometimes it's just stuff that they want to change rules-wise. So they bring out errata to change stuff up. The first one was kind of mostly just correcting misprints. This one has actually got some changes and things, some sort of buffs to different rules. Alchemists get quite a bit of love. I'm not going to go through all of it because there are loads of them. If you want to read them, they're on the Paizo website under FAQs. I will throw a link on our Discord. So if you're a Discord link, you can get a link to read them all in general. But some of the big stuff that you're going to find, all classes, their unarmed attack penalty is now goes up with all their other weapon skills, because that got left behind, and it's used for escaping grapples, which is really important. So that will go up. That's simple. Alchemists get loads of extra stuff, so you're going to get to make extra items. You can use medium armor now. You can you get your DC for bombs is now your class DC, rather than it being just so rather than your bombs becoming worse as you level up, they stay the same level as you are. So Beelzebub is much more powerful now, and much harder to kill, which I'm sure will make everyone really happy.
Yes.
Alongside.
Has to actually go and buy the medium armor first.
Yes, that's true.
I'm not sure if Beelzebub could complete a week's groceries, but we'll let him loose.
He'll send his children for it. A lot of the other changes are to do with to do carrying capacity. So they've really simplified all of the rules for carrying stuff. Now there's only three statuses of stuff. You've either got something in your hand, you've got something that is worn, so it's like on a bandolier or something, and you can retrieve it with one action, or you've got it in a bag and you've got to take the bag off and do it. They've also lowered the bulk of lots of stuff, and made it a lot easier to carry things. This won't necessarily affect the way we play so much, because we're pretty fast and loose with our with bulk and carrying capacity anyway, because that's the easier way to play it. But they've kind of done things like that. Oh, and they've clarified a load of sustained spells to say whether you can sustain them more than once. And I'm surprised we didn't find this, because this sort of loophole we would stumble upon. There was nothing in the rules that said you couldn't sustain Flaming Sphere 3 times in your turn and deal damage with it 3 times. Because it's only one action to sustain the spell. So there was technically nothing in the rules to say you couldn't just ping pong this ball off someone's face 3 times and that be your whole turn, and do absurd amounts of damage. So they've taken that out.
Damn.
I know, right? Imagine how good that would have been in recent games.
Yeah.
All of that, loads of little small things as well. I'll throw the link up on the Discord and people can check it.
Cool.
What else have we got? I wanted to give a shout out to the digital GM screen on Archives of Nethys. This was from a couple of weeks ago that this got launched, but I just had a chance to properly look through it, and it's really good. Archives of Nethys we're big fans of. It's the rule system reference document for Pathfinder, so it's got all the rules for Pathfinder in that you can look up. And what they've done is they've made a digital GM screen that just has kind of all the stuff that you need really quickly all the time when you're GMing. So it's got all of the conditions in there. We could, if we wanted to, completely retire Condition Corner. We could put Ross out to pasture on that one.
No!
It's got we've just got a jingle for it as well.
Yeah.
It's got like all the death and dying rules, how to use hero points, all of your DCs by level, simple, like how a simple encounter budget. One I really like, it's got a table for hazards. So if you want to make a hazard like a trap or a natural hazard, quicksand, something like that, and you want it to be leveled to your party, you've got like a level 5 party, you want them to stumble into a dangerous swamp and they're going to sink into it. What that will give you is like, here's the DC they need to spot it. Here's its AC if you can fight it. Here's its to hit if it hits you. All of the stuff that you basically need. Here's how much damage it will do if it goes off. So you can very quickly just homebrew a trap on the spot. Talking about homebrew, and just reskin it to whatever you want and have the numbers fit for the level that you're at. That I really, really like. I think that's a really nice little tool. So I might be using that, because I've never used a GM screen, because the way we've always played, it's either been in a pub with pints of beer getting spilled everywhere, or it's been in our old studio at James's where there was no space at all on the table. Now we've moved, I am considering getting a GM screen
Oh.
to actually work on. Do you guys use GM screens at all?
Yeah, I got one ages ago as a gift, and it's one of those handy ones that's got like some of the handy rules all on the back of it. So you put it up, it's got a lovely landscape at the front, and then you can see all the little weights and little DCs and all that kind of stuff in the back. Have I used any of them? No, they're all there. I can see them all. They're all easy to get every time. If I'm confused about something, I'll just bring out my tablet and start scanning through the actual rules and the thing. I always forget to look at them once ever, and that's because it reminded me by a player. A player reminded me to just be like, isn't it down here? And I was like, oh yeah, it is, thanks. Yeah.
I have one, and I used it for a bit at the beginning when we were doing it in the pub, and then I'm like the same. I've got it there in front of me, but then I was using a. The thing is, when you're using an adventure module, you don't really, I think, need them as much because everything is there, like the sort of save DCs and everything. So you don't really need them as much but when you're homebrewing, I would say I'd need it then. And I like ones that are just blank, and then you can put your own things in them, like so you can put people's names, characters' names and stuff. That I used to have like sticky notes inside of mine, just putting loads of different sticky notes of people's names and stuff.
I've seen a lot of, when I played a lot of games with the London role playing community, shout out LRC, that the DMs there would often sticky note the things along the wrist. You just have like a little array at the top with people's fantasy names on the top. One of the DMs actually moved them down, used it as an initiative tracker. So we'd like slide them down and then change them so that they could keep track of whose initiative was whose, which is interesting.
Any more news, Dan?
Yeah, I had.
I've got to remember all these questions that are about. I shouldn't have done.
We've got them stacking up, have we?
Yeah.
Okay, I have two more pieces. One of them is super quick.
It's all right. You can
The
take your time.
Kingmaker is out on the PlayStation. There is a discount code for it on the Paizo blog. Go onto the Paizo blog. Again, I'll throw a link to this on the Discord.
Oh.
35% off that. So if you want to play Kingmaker on PlayStation, then you can get a little bit of money off that.
Scott loves Kingmaker on the Xbox.
Listen, the console port is a good game. Pathfinder Kingmaker is a good game. It is beset with technical difficulties. Just be aware of it. That's on the Xbox. I'm not sure if the PlayStation has this. It is still absolutely worth your money. If you're getting it for a discount, it is wonderful. The writers have poured love into the quest narrative, into the companions narrative, into the side quests. They're all lovingly done. The fact that the Xbox port crashes every hour of play, there's a different thing entirely. But yeah, there are some other difficulties with it as well. But I think Owlcat did an amazing job with that game, and I'm still playing it.
You're still playing it, yeah. That's the sign of the, that's like, you remember, Ross, you'll remember No Mercy, the greatest wrestling game ever made,
yes.
Which was also virtually unplayable because it would just randomly switch itself off and delete all of your saved content. And it's still remembered fondly because it was so good for the times it did work.
Cool. Well, that's exciting. Yeah, so go on to PlayStation, find the code, and then give that a little down, cheeky 35% off.
I need to get back in at Kingmaker.
Well, now you can.
It's a good progression. I like it. I like the whole setup of you come to just nowhere, and someone goes, "There you go. You're pretty tough. Try and make a kingdom out of that nonsense." And you go, all right, maybe I will. Give me a couple of years. And, the possibility to do that is very appealing, especially it fits an adventure campaign, leveling up that whole idea of where do you get past level 12? Who are you when you're level 15? It's like, well, I could be either advisor to a king or a king myself. Like, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's good. Interesting enough as well, Pathfinder Kingmaker was... I played it ages ago, a little bit on a PC. I used little bits of it as like inspiration for a homebrew campaign that I've written. Like one of the homebrew campaigns that I've written is like a splice of Pathfinder Kingmaker with a few of those elements in it, and basically Skyrim, because I wanted those two things in it, like a sort of a mystical Scandinavian wilderness that was trying to kill you all the time, but that you could make things out of, and it had people there that were not so dangerous if you could free them from the monsters and stuff like that. It was good. It's good. It's an inspiring setting.
And the tabletop version that's my longest running campaign that I've been in, is the tabletop version of that. We're on book 3, maybe book 4 of it. We're working our way through it. It's an incredible game. It is kind of the "Are we the baddies" adventure path, because there's some stuff about colonialism in there. If you get too deep in that, like, you're like, whose is this land that they're like, they're bandits. Don't worry, they're bandits. Just kill them, take the land, build a city on their ruins. It'll be fine.
Yeah, Jamandi Eldori has a lot of questions raised for her when after the distribution of that quest. It is interesting, isn't it? Yeah, you spend a year there and you're like, hang on a minute, I'm awful good. Am I still? Yeah.
Rogvagurg says, I would like to try and do a reskin of Kingmaker one day in a different region. That'd be quite
Yeah.
cool.
You
S-
can totally do that. It absolutely lends itself to it. I mean, you could wait until the special edition one comes out, whenever that comes out, probably around the same time as Cyberpunk 2077. It's that
Yeah.
kind of project. It's
Yeah.
been delayed a number of times, but yeah, you could easily do that. It reskins very easily that adventure. And interestingly, if you're interested in doing it in space, that is going to be one of the Starfinder adventure paths coming up. They're going to do and they've learned from it, colonizing an uninhabited system
Well done.
adventure path. You're going to be like, it's going to be about different private companies all trying to settle this uninhabited system. So there won't be any kind of, there's no one there, which you can do in space. That works. So you get a bit of that.
Rockvigeg said, since most people I know have played the original, but sounds like a complete Homebrew Kingdom game may be better. I think doing it in the shackles would be cool.
Oh, that would be fun.
I think you've got the right idea. Take the elements from the thing that you like. Don't feel beholden to it, and go and make your own world. Go and make your own kingdom. That's what I love about like homebrewing. Is like, oh, I like this side. It's like your approach to DMing or GMing. Is like you play with a load of people. You play with all kinds of different people, and you go, oh, I like what they did. I like what they did. And you take it all and you stick it in your brain, and you go, I want to make something which is an amalgamation of all of them plus my own spin on it. Like that. Absolutely do that. I think that's the exact way to do it.
All right, Dan. This is leading us into talking about homebrewing again. But what else is there for the news section?
What else is there for the news? It's a final news item. That's that the Pathfinder Second Edition Beginners Box comes out today, and that's the Pathfinder product I've been excited about for a while. It's the slightly simplified version of Second Edition designed to teach you the rules. It's got simplified character sheets. You get sets of color-coded dice in it, so everyone can have their own sets of dice. You get pre-generated characters. You get a short adventure. But the thing about it that I'm excited about is that they're then bringing out like a module length adventure, a 5th level adventure, which follows on from the story of the beginner's box. And then there's going to be another adventure set in the same city afterwards. So you can effectively have a first campaign that starts with a tutorial game and then builds from there. And the thing which is most excited about, because I rant about this on the show all the time, that Paizo keeps saying they're going to do it and they don't, it's having full Roll20 support. So there'll be a version of it on Roll20 from the beginning. So even if you are locked down again, like we are here in the UK, you can play it online. So I'm going to try and get hold of a copy so we can look at it. Maybe we'll do a full review. But I love beginners boxes. I love things that can bring new players into a game.
Very
fun one.
Very good. In other news as well, there's a new D&D book coming out on the 17th of November. It's called Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It's some more expansive rules for your gaming. And it's got...
Have you seen anything from that, Ross?
No, not yet.
I'm following some of the excerpts that Jeremy Crawford has been throwing up on Twitter. I think it's the first book from D&D they put out in a while. They've actually been interested in some interesting concepts in. They've gone to town on all the classes.
Yeah.
They've added a lot of stuff to it. It is interesting.
That's cool. I'd be excited to pick that up. So, all right, let's get back into talking about homebrew.
Was that the end of the news section?
Yes, that is the end.
That's all the news.
Outro.
That is Paizo news and D&D news. Okay.
Better than the intro.
I've just realized that.
I'm just reading some of the. So there was a question earlier about our DMs. Dan, who do you think is a better DM, me or Scott? That was actually a genuine question.
No one asked that.
I swear to God, they did ask that. You can go back and watch this. Yeah.
I'm just saying, if it comes down to a duel, I have a sword here. Happy to go with it.
Yeah, I don't really have anything. I would concede, and I would say Scott because I've played in Scott's games.
Shut up! You
Yeah.
can't do that.
I've played in both your games. Your games are fantastic. You're both great GMs.
Thank you.
This is what people do. Well done, Dan. Well done. Nice.
Another question was from
I think
Mad.
can I jump
Go
on
on.
that actually in a
Yes,
minute?
go
I
on.
think that's interesting. That's interesting because people did this a lot with people called it the Matt Mercer effect when Critical Role came out and Critical Role got big, and people started doing this is slightly off the topic. People started doing like, oh my god, I'm a DM, but I should try and be what Matt Mercer does, and he himself keeps saying, please do not try and do what I do.
Yeah.
Do not compare. There is no comparison between storytellers. Like, we do different things, and some people do one thing better and some people do another thing better. There is no comparison. There shouldn't be. You have a storyteller giving you a story that is a respected thing. Whatever they are doing, it's good. So yeah, I know that was only a playful question, but it does lead on to other things. People have this, you know.
Here's
I
some,
know
yeah.
players I've like started playing with who've never played before. After playing with me for a while, they're like, oh, maybe I could run my own campaign, but I don't want to like do it because I'm not a proper DM. And you're like, no, like that's not the way to do it. You can do it. The whole
Yeah.
impetus should be to go and like make stories for people, you know.
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think after you DM for a bit, you start to learn things about your DMing style and things you're good at and things you're like strong with, things you're not so strong with. So you tend to lean towards that. Like I'm more about role playing, like with my characters, role playing rather than combat. And like whereas, you know, I might be stronger at like creating stupid characters with stupid voices and stuff. I think like you lean to what your strengths are, which is what you said. Yeah, like it's very true. I lean to my humor because that's the only thing I've got when I DM. So this leads us on to a question. Mad Turnip said, "Do you DM with models slash Roll20 type thing during lockdown, or the DCP theatre of the mind? And what do you prefer?" So
That's interesting. We've been upgraded to the DCP theater of the mind. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, we
Dan,
have.
did you invent it? Did you create it?
DCP theatre, like every other theatre, it is dark right now and full of cobwebs. How about? I mean, I've talked about maps a lot because obviously we do it on the show. I use them in terms of games I run outside of the show. They're all Roll20 based, so I have used them for a bit. I ran Aeon Throne for a bunch of friends for Starfinder recently and used that basically out of the box. Just used all the maps for that, and that was great and that was fun. But that was mostly new players, so it was new players and James, who is absurdly more powerful than the rest of them because it's James Unleashed, where he can just amass all of the power. But it's a great campaign. But now we're playing Signal of Screams, which is very much more roleplay heavy. So I've been leaning much more on kind of just static screens of just putting up an image of what the room looks like, and we just roleplay it and theatre of the mind it, and occasionally throw. Also, the maps for Signal of Screams are garbage because they're 10-foot squares, and that's impossible to put in Roll20. But so we've kind of done a lot more theatre of the mind with that sort of stuff at the moment, but they're really getting into it, and it's great to kind of tease players out of that who have started playing very literally and being like, I move one square and I do my ability, to get them to the point that they're yelling at each other and actually, you know, role playing it out rather than just looking at the board. That's lovely. I'm, you know, because you know me, I hate using miniatures if I can avoid it.
Scott, what about you?
I've come very, very much round on that. I think I basically run most of my games in theatre of the mind. I think it's more satisfying. I think you can inspire people's inspiration better, and I think people role play more. However, when over various lockdowns, I've been able to whap out a map for my housemates. Like my housemates wanted to start playing, so ran a few games for them, and I have some equipment for that. Like there's the book of battle maps, 50 flip through things, which are wipe clean. They've got lovely maps on them.
Yes.
It's great. It's a great little thing because you can just flick through it and be like, this is appropriate. You stick that down, and if you're doing theatre of the mind, people get, yeah, see it on my head, see it on my head. Every now and then, like you stick down a map and get some miniatures out, people go, whoa, and you know it's a big thing. You want to stick in like a boss fight, the joy on people's faces when they get to have a tiny little thing and then move it around a map and see their thing is immense. It's great. It's a great payoff. I love doing it. But yeah, mainly theatre of the mind. I prefer it.
Blinded Sphinx said, I have had a effect from you guys. I've been in Dan and Scott's game, and when someone else did it was a bit of a letdown. Lucky to be introduced to the game through you guys. Yeah.
Thanks.
So
Thank you so
that's-
much. That's really, I weirdly, my wife came by while I was playing in just to pick up like society game at a convention, and like listened into like a society game being played. I was just like, oh, that's why people listen to your podcast. It's really different to this. And I was like, yeah, this is how you just normally play it when you're just like playing it as a game.
Yeah, I think in terms of what I went the opposite. So when I started doing an adventure module. I started doing Rise of Tiamat, Tyranny of Dragons, and I used a lot of the maps if I could. But some of the maps in that book was really annoying because it would be like 20 feet squares rather than or 10 feet squares, which is really, really annoying when you're trying to create that into a map that because I originally, when I first started, I was like, I need something to look at so that it will help me rather than theater of the mind, because I'm not very good at explaining things and telling in detail what is around you. So I found it easier to look at a map. However, as time went on, I realized that it wasn't really helping. Like, we got to the final battle of fighting Tiamat, spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler because, I mean, it's been out for like
Imagine
10
if
years.
the
Called
Rise
Rise
of
of
Tiamat
Tiamat.
adventure didn't involve Tiamat Rising at some point.
That
You
would be sick though if it was just Lolth that came in at the end. It was like psych.
But that map I used, we used Roll20, didn't we, for like the latter half of when we were in lockdown. And again, the maps in that were ridiculous because the map was so huge. Stu said he's got to go. He's got a Zoom audition. Really helpful info, though, chaps. Thank you.
Good luck, Stu.
Good luck. But like when it came around to doing it, it was ridiculous because like the squares were like 50 feet, and it was just ridiculous, like, to quantify that.
Yeah, it was interesting. We're about halfway through the fight. We just all of a sudden kept finding potions of like flight and speed on the clerics that we kept slaying, and Ross was like, "Oh," and we were like, "It's cool, don't worry about it." Yeah. Maps are frustrating, and that change from like 5 to 10 is annoying as well. I'm trying to in my homebrew campaign at the moment, I've spliced in a little bit of like content. I'm trying to run the Village of Homlet, which is Gary Gygax's first AD&D module that he ever wrote. I'm trying to throw that in to my homebrew campaign at the moment, and the only thing about that is all the grids on the castle and the moat house are all in 10-foot square. So you're like, players are asking you, where am I again? It's doing like what you said. You're like, you were here. It's twice as far away as I thought it was. This castle is huge. I've got no idea what's going on. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So it brings us on to another little thing. How long are we on? I think we're on like about 50.
We got 10 minutes or so.
Yeah. Has there been points in your homebrew campaigns or campaigns that you've chosen as like loosely based on adventure modules that something has happened in your campaign that you totally had to homebrew and that you totally had to go off? If so, what are the ones that stand out to you the most? Let's go with Scott first.
I was going to say everything. It's hard to quantify. Everything that happens in them is do you mean like what like something that is surprising, or
or like the most like the things that you've gone that you've had to come up with on the fly then and there, that you had to homebrew that straight away? I mean, I'll go with what I have, and I always use this one. Is in my first campaign with Drum, and he arrived in the city of I think it was Baldur's Gate, and they met a dockhand who was just registering their ship as they came into dock, and I think it was Scott and mine NPC, and they were a bit normal Danger Club, sort of like a bit standoffish, because he was
bit beef,
because he was being a bit of a dick as well. And then I think Scott threw his ledger into the water, and then the guy was like, we're going to arrest you now. And then then Drum just decided to chop one of the city guards' hands off. So then, without like in my head, I was like, "Oh fuck, okay." Legitimately, like they would literally execute him for killing a city guard. So then I had to create like. Luckily, that happened near the end of the game. So then I had a whole week to come up with like something to, to like I had to pull strings. So basically, I made the guard who was actually on the take to this undercover gang, and he was actually a real asshole, and he. There was and like the team had to find this undercover gang, and they had to like break the case. There was a court case as well for his life.
There was that trial, man. It was long. Yeah. What was great about that is the homebrew element that you had to add in. Like, it's almost not. It's the great thing about homebrew is that you're just going on what would the reactions be of a bunch of city guard who watched this crime happen. Like, the homebrew happens organically and naturally. You go like, I mean, I understand what the ramifications of this action are going to be, and all of a sudden you're creating homebrew for free. Like, and as you did, you sort of made this whole knock-on chain of effects that are actually, I mean, wild and crazy for us because we were going through this other thing at the time. But for you, it's like, obviously this would happen. You're in a massive cosmopolitan city. It has an army. You guys are going to get put on trial, obviously. So, you know, I like that.
Matt Turnip says, if you want, I can Photoshop the right grid for you, Scott, for your map of your... That'd be amazing.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. What I'm going to do is when my players have completed this, if they survive, I mean, because it is AD&D, they could all die. It's very lethal. But if they survive, I'm going to give them the copies of the old one, the original one. I'm going to sort of like screenshot it and give them to it so they can now like, you know, do what they want with it. But so they can deal with a 10-foot squared then. So I want to pass it on. But thank you anyway. That was really nice of you.
What about you, Dan? No, sorry. I was talking about myself, and then I went to Scott. So, Scott, what do you think?
I haven't got anything. Your that court diversion was nowhere near as dramatic. I think the thing that comes to mind for me is when I had a team of mine, they play in a place called Cloud Vein, had come out of this dungeon, and they had found things about the BBEG, and they found things about themselves, and they were trying to take some time. You know, you decompress, don't you? Come out of a dungeon. Yeah. It's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot. And I had an NPC turn up there who was like it was an intimate relation of one of the characters that they'd given me in their backstory. So had them turn up, and my players were too busy decompressing and being emotional and going through their own stuff that they had no time for my NPC. And I was like, I kept putting this NPC in front of them being like, why aren't they engaging with this plot? And I realized, I was like, these drama queens are having more fun having a massive emotional breakdown in taverns and like trying to break into shops and then crying. They're having a great time. Like, this is what they want to do. They're being their characters. I'm like, I just sort of took the pedal off for a while. I was like, go and run with this. They're having the best time. Like, some of the great homebrew sessions are ones where you realize you haven't said anything in about 40 minutes because they're just going. It's brilliant.
What about you, Dan?
I mean,
actually,
apart
just
from
before
the time I said the day is yours.
Just before, I'll just whilst the chat's there, we've had Candice has said that bloody court case. She remembers fondly of that court case. She's in the one. She is in the Monday games that we play. Matt Turnip said, "What would actually? I'll save that." Umbrol42 said, I had a GM pull the exact opposite. I jumped from a car to stop corrupt police beating a man to death. Then he turns up as a major known villain. That's cool. That's it is the opposite, really. I'll ask this question after Dan has told us his thing.
I think, Scott, I think you hit on it exactly. It's listening to your players is how homebrew works. It's because the thing about it is it's very easy to think when you're
Blinded
building.
Sphinx is off now, so bye. Thank you for coming.
Take care. When you're building this world, and especially when you've put so much work into building this world, it's easy to kind of go with the idea of like, well, this is how the world would react. So you've done this thing, you know, you've kicked off at the guards. Therefore, 100 guards turn up and kill you in the street, and that's how it would go. If you shoot a cop like in the middle of broad daylight, that's probably how that's going to end. There's no way out. But you're not making us when you're homebrewing or when you're running a game, you're not creating a simulation, you're creating a fantasy. So you have to be like, okay, how do your actions now progress a story that is still focused around you, even though you've lashed out at the world? And how do you kind of, and that's kind of how we got onto the court case that you did, and turned into this courtroom drama. And you can have this, and it happens a lot with, especially when your players reject something that you have put a lot of thought into. Or that you have not even necessarily thought, but what you thought was going to be the thrust of the story. I remember when we were running our sort of Western themed River Kingdoms Pathfinder campaign, and I had very much kind of figured that the way the narrative was going to go was you guys were going to end up working for this terrible person. He's this lord who's a complete dick. He's rude to all of you. He treats everyone badly. He's kind of an evil character, but he has work for you and it will pay. And it was going to be that kind of Firefly kind of thing of being like, well, we're going to take the job from the guy we don't like, and maybe there's going to be a moral choice later on as to whether we get the money or whether we do something, and you guys quite reasonably completely rejected this guy at the first opportunity and just trashed his party and walked out and decided you were never going to work with him. So, and that immediately was like, well, that's the next sort of 4 months of story that I had written that's now on a bonfire.
Yeah, sorry about that. The thing about that is that you presented such a sandbox world that was so believable. It was just so believable to us that we could just walk away from this and go live our lives elsewhere, because we were firmly believing in the fact that this was a completely sandbox world. That's why.
No, exactly. And it provided this thing of being like, okay, I'm like, okay, so that's a difficult thing, because the way it's set up is that was your only opportunity to make money. Like that was the only work that was going. So you guys are stuck now. And it's like, I don't want it to just be like, well, now you don't get any quests because you didn't go to the quest dealer, because that's punishing you for taking logical actions as your character, and that's no fun as a game. But at the same time, the integrity of the world still kind of relies on the idea that kind of the rich have the money and other people don't have the money. So we ended up having a kind of a time jump game where it would be like, okay, we're going to play by weeks now. This is like 2 weeks on. Here's what happens. And you just have this run of time where there's kind of not as much happens, and you don't get sent on big jobs that make you loads of money. But like maybe after 2 weeks, a troll attacks the village and you guys are called up to go and defend that. And so we progress the story and we give the characters something to do and we let them develop in a way that isn't like that, while I scrabble behind the scenes and try and come up with another story or try and steal bits of that's the other thing, is just, if people don't take your plot lines, just take all that plot and just rewrite it and put it in somewhere else. Like the most important thing about homebrewing is that nothing is certain until it matters that it's certain. Until a player rolls a check, until the player rolls a sense motive to see if that character is lying, it doesn't matter whether that character is lying or not. You can work all that out. As soon as it's relevant to the players, that's when it's locked, and that's when you have to follow through on it.
Yeah, and player relevance is big as well. I just remembered another thing that happened in one of my other campaigns. There was this big epic showdown with this black dragon in a cave full of water, and the players were like several rounds in, and they were getting knocked out, and there was problems and fire and doom and stuff. And then one of my players stopped, and for his round, he said, "I take off my shoe and I throw it in the water," and everyone was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, and then for my move action, I walk around 3 times and I say the word Wednesday backwards. And I'm like, he's gone off map. I don't know what's going on. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He looked at me and said, full on face, when is this water fresh water or seawater? I went, "What are you okay? Are you having a thing? Do you need to talk?" He was like, "If it's fresh water, I throw my sandal in, because that's how you told me that we can summon Crucible the Wizard." And I remembered one rant that I made, completely made up, just improving, just a little stupid rant weeks and weeks ago about how you could summon this mighty powerful wizard. And he went, "I do it." And I tossed his sandal in. And I gave him Crucible the Wizard, because I was like, I mean, obviously he's been paying attention more than I have. It was a completely, utterly homebrew madness moment. It's just this wizard comes through an underground cave door to fight this dragon because he got summoned. He got a message. It's bizarre. It's just like mad. But that kind of thing happens in homebrew. It's wonderful.
A comment.
Homebrew is about doing loads of work that you don't then use. You know,
Yeah.
I spent most of a day earlier this week with loads of maps of Galarian spread out on the floor with rulers and bits of string measuring distances and working out like margins of error on different spells and things. And then, you know, without spoiling anything, we got into a record and you guys nearly didn't go down that route at all. It was just like,
That's not a spoiler for our fans.
no,
They
it's
know.
not at all.
They know what we
Yeah.
like.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's true. You can guarantee that we will do the opposite. Somebody said, I missed it, but somebody said that homebrewing is like the DM yes and. Like the DM basically going yes and. Okay, so here's a question from Mad Turnips. What would be a setting you have not DM'd you would want to? Let's go. I would say probably Alien. To be fair, like because I it's sitting there and I'm just like another rule set that I've got to learn. So yeah, I'd say Alien because I think it would be a really cool horror. I've never done a horror before, so that'd be cool. What about you, Dan?
Gosh, one that I haven't done before. I guess I've never done a full Western. I've never done a full Wild West. We've done a kind of fantasy Wild West in our home game, and a lot of Starfinder is a bit sort of sci-fi Wild West. Like we're watching The Mandalorian at the moment, and my wife keeps being like, "Is this based on Starfinder?" And I'm like, "Don't ever ask a Star Wars fan that. That's not how." But it makes me want. Yeah, I would love to do a full Wild. Anything you throw a Wild West theme on top of, I love.
Scott, what about you?
I like so many. Like with lockdown, you just have more time to think. I'd love to do a fully committed, bizarre cyberpunk world, like where the world itself has like adopted some things, like technology begins to live. I'd love to do that. I'd love to do like a full-on air Zeppelin pirates thing that you live exclusively in the clouds, and part of the reason, like you have to farm moisture from the clouds that pass by and that you've dropped by, and there's a whole thing about the ground that doesn't exist. Like
a bit
there's
like
loads I want to do, like a dinosaur one where you have to like the ranges become very important for dinosaur stuff. Like there's loads I'd love to do. I'd love to do like a steampunk one as well, but it's weird. Steampunk's weird as a genre. Whenever you try and do a steampunk thing, it just sounds a bit dumb, but I love it. There's so much good stuff set in steampunk, but you never do it. I think Key and Peele have got like a sketch about how when your mate turns up as steampunk, everyone's just like you know, but I do love it. I'd love to do that setting as well.
Actually, I'd love to have a go at GMing to really test it, is to do something in a modern setting, do something set in the real world. Because I started out playing World of Darkness and Hunter and Vampire and stuff, which is all set in the real world. And I've gotten really into, in terms of streams and podcasts and stuff that I listen to, I've gotten really into people playing Delta Green, which is set in the real world with a kind of Cthulhu-y sort of thing. And I want to do that test as a GM of where somebody can just be like, I found this thing on Wikipedia, which is objectively true in our world. How does this work? And just having to just explain that level of things when you can't just be like, a wizard did it. I think that could be really fun.
Some of the Candice says, we said we're doing Alien, didn't we, for my birthday? She private messaged me and asked me to run Alien for her birthday. So we'll probably be doing that. Mad Turnip said Air Zeppelin pirate 100%. Candice doesn't like steampunk. She went, steampunk.
It has that reaction. It's a funny old world, steampunk. Yeah. It's funny.
It's a party theme. It's not a system. It's not a genre. It's just cogs and hats.
Mad Mophead said Waterworld in the sky. That would be
nice.
I would think that a really cool RPG would be the worlds of Bioshock, like the first Bioshock and then Bioshock Infinite, where it's all it's basically like you said, Scott, it's all in the air. Like there's like these cities in the air that are just floating. That'd be a sick, not based on Bioshock, but like that sort of, I mean, you could literally do that in 5e probably, like, or whatever system you wanted to.
And part of Quest's lore as well, Quest RPG, part of their lore as well as the rifts and the worlds that essentially live in the sky. Although it is up to the guide, they call them guides, by the way. It is up to the guide where the rifts come from. It could be like under the sea or like in space or in the sky, so it could be anywhere. But they do have kind of cities in the sky, sort of. They're dangerous.
Steph said, Mandalorian based on Starfinder, that's great. I would say it's Firefly with a lot more aliens. Yeah. Matt Turner says, Dresden Files might fit your idea, Dan. And Umbrel42 said, World of Darkness only works in the 1990s.
Because it's so edgy.
Yeah, it's super edgy.
Steph says she loves the Dresden Files, working my way through the books again. Now, Matt Turnips has asked, do any of you sell your DM skills? No, because no one would buy that. I would have to give them away for free.
You say that, don't be too hasty on that, Ross, because haven't we actually all signed up to that on the Patreon?
Yes, we all do.
No.
It's the opposite of what you said, Ross. It's true. We have.
Yeah, technically, yes, we have. You can hire us as your well, you can hire any of the Danger Club. I would pick me, because if you want a mad game, pick me. If you want a game where Scott's going to be like, oh, hello, look, there's some politics here, there you go. And if you want Dan to just constantly want you to die in your game, then just pick him as well.
You said, I mean, Ross, I think Ross made that very concise and very accurate. Thank you, Ross. But there is one thing that Ross left out, his scatological obsession. If you want actual sandwiches of poo in your game, or maybe just creatures made out of poo, or maybe everyone has to poo all the time, then go with Ross.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you want to, hire me.
Can pick.
We have. I've done a bit of paid GMing over lockdown for people who've, and that was kind of some people like, "Will you run us a game?" I was like, "I've got nothing else on," and they insisted on paying me because I'm a terrible business person. So I didn't initially say pay me. I was like, "Yeah, I'll run you a game," but they were very kind, and they sent me some critical fumble cards as well. My staff had a cure of the Beatrice, so I can make James have horrible fumbles.
Good, do that a lot. Yeah, actually, I have weirdly got a job as a paid DM, but it's something. It was done very optimistically before another lockdown came in. So in terms of getting in front of people and being able to do it, yeah, it's fun. But it's like there's certain games and things out there which are like a learning tool. But the one that I've been hired for is essentially very, very, very fantasy. I turn up to the training day expecting it to be like, this is just trains, right? You want us to calculate how fast the dragon moves one way and how fast the other one moves the other way. And they were like, no. The kids are they're level 7 elves. They're getting calmer abilities and stuff like that. And I was just like baffled. The art is amazing. Like, it's beautiful. And they've got an entire system. They use all the dice. And I was like, oh, okay. They're like, do you play these games? I was like, yeah, no, I do. And to prove myself. It was very impressive.
Amazing. Running games for kids is the greatest. Like, that will teach you to homebrew in a hurry, is running games for kids. I ran a load of kids through Weeby Goblins over lockdown because they wanted to learn how to play Pathfinder, and it's when you get to the demon horse that's trying to kill people, and one of the kids is like, I'm going to try and make friends with it. And wants to like try and understand why the horse is angry and have it as her horse. And you're just like, oh my God, suddenly I need to understand why this horse is so angry. And I know that the reason it's angry is that someone submitted some funny art of an angry horse. And so they put it in the adventure. That's all there is. So suddenly I'm like coming with the motivations of a horse that will pass muster with a 12-year-old. Great for teaching that.
Okay, so we're getting near the end. We've been going a bit long, but I've got 2 more things. We'll finish off with a question that I've got. But I just want to know, firstly, which do you prefer, homebrewing or using campaign adventure modules? I will go with myself, and I'll say that I prefer now, having done both, pretty much, because most of the stuff that's in my Carbon 2185 game has been homebrew, has been elements of everyone's backstory, because I in the previous campaign I didn't get really to do that because it was all about the campaign, it was all about the adventure module, whereas this campaign I wanted it to be very much like everyone felt this was personal to them. And so I left out like a lot of things about, this overarching bad guy or something, you know. And I prefer to just go with sort of what the group's doing and any natural progressions of like enemies and villains that's created in the homebrew games. What about you, Scott? What would you say?
I'd echo you heartily on that. That's exactly the reason why I would pick Homebrew in a heartbeat over the two, because you get to make the world organically based on your players, and you get to make it unique to them, and not solely centered around them. But you know, the part of the process for me is vague idea, ask vaguely what kind of characters they want to play. From those things, they'll say like, you know, mine graduated from a wizard college, or mine got, you know, used to be a hobgoblin slave, blah, blah, blah. And you go, okay, those things are now in my world. And all of a sudden, the creative process is a communal one. You're doing group storytelling. I would pick Homebrew every time. Short answer, Homebrew. However, I do use the written content to fall back on every now and then. Like I've used stuff from Tales of the Yawning Portal and the Hommlet stuff that I'm doing right now. It's good to just slide in there every now and then when you need a dungeon that's got a good reason to be there or works in your setting. Like, yeah, those things kind of would come up in Cloud Vein. That kind of, I could see that there. And I know that he's got that, which means that will be there. It's nice to be able to do that. But yeah, generally I would go 90% Homebrew.
Nice. Dan?
I'd say they're one and the same for me. They're indistinguishable. I like to color outside the lines, but for that I want the lines to be there to begin with, so that I can ignore most of them. Pre-written stuff gives you structure that you can frame all of your world around, and it means you can ignore the stuff that you don't need to know. If you've got a book that tells you what the days of the week are called and what the seasons are like and what the weather's like in this particular thing, you don't have to think about any of that. You can focus on what your players want and their stuff. And if you want to have a fight and you want to set a fight that's at the right sort of level, a pre-written encounter will give you that, and it will give you a combat encounter that is challenging and that has been play tested. And that was written by very experienced designers, which you can then twist and turn and make around your players as much as you like. I think that homebrew is effectively the game. Everything is homebrew, but pre-written stuff lets you have something else do the heavy lifting on the boring stuff effectively. It takes that bit of it out of it, and it lets you as a GM focus on your players and their story, which is what you're trying to tell, without having to worry about that side of things. That's why I like both of them.
Nice.
One tiny thing I'd like to add on
Go.
that as a little tip I found useful, and it's bandied around the various TTRPG Twitter sphere a lot, is if you are coming up with a random encounters table for whatever homebrew thing you do, then allow your players to add one good thing and one bad thing. Farm those ideas from them, put them in the random encounters table, and then months down the line you'll roll on it and be like, oh no, the two mating owl bears, and then they'll look around at each other and be like, whose was that? And it'll be like, oh no, that was me, we've got to deal with that now. It's great. I love doing that. Anyway, sorry.
I really like like when you do something that is your own creation as well, it hits home that actually that was really good. Like in the Carbon game that I ran, there was a moment that with James's character, and he had to free his AI girlfriend from the shackles of this evil corporation, and there was a real touching scene between me and him right at the end, and you echo that with some music and stuff, and it was
lovely, mate. Like
yeah.
It was really, when the scene started, I really wasn't sure, because we'd only just met each other's characters, really. I really wasn't sure where it was going or how it would really land. And by the end of it, I was like, and then what happens? I was so invested in it.
And that is another thing that's really cool. So one more thing. I want you to just give a sort of a final thought on homebrew to anyone that's thinking about DMing, and if they want to do homebrewing, any tips and tricks you have that you've got for someone. Give them a sort of like a little paragraph of something that you can tell them before they go into homebrewing. Let's go with Dan first.
Nothing is true. Everything is permitted.
Short and sweet.
Is that the Assassins or the Bavarian Illuminati?
that is. I mean, it's definitely the Assassins. It's probably ripped off from something else, because Assassin's Creed is the Wikipedia game, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Assassino. Cool. And Scott?
I'd say what is the story that you and your friends want to tell each other, and everything else will fill in the lines.
Very, very nice. And that draws a close to our Dangerous Wednesdays show with me guest hosting and Daniel Thompson. Say goodbye, Daniel Thompson.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much.
And Scott Wilson Besgrove.
Goodbye. I really wanted to say at the start, long-time listener, first-time caller, but I bet James did that when he first did this, didn't he? I bet it's the kind of thing that James would have said.
I would love everyone to, follow us on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Give us a tweet, talk on our Discord about any games that you're homebrewing at the moment, any funny stories that you've got. Please feel free to talk to us. We love hearing from you guys. And also, we have a wonderful Patreon at the moment, so please give that a look. And
you guys are on Danger Recall this week as well, aren't you? If you're on the Patreon, this is the Ross and Scott week.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
and soon every week will be Ross and Scott. Or
not Ross and Sam, apparently. You've forgotten about Sam now.
Sam's gone.
All right, Ross.
But anyway, thank you, everyone. Stay dangerous and stay Wednesdays.
Using it. I am using it. I'm going to tweet it.
Yes, Mad Turnips. I assume James is back next week. I already said the goodbyes. Now I feel like we're just carrying on.
End the show.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, we're going to go now. Okay, hold on. I've just got to get to the end stream bit.
Bye, everyone.
As I was saying, bye.